Well, welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. In this episode, we're gonna go over an issue that you might have a problem with: how to paint a difficult part and not get any paint runs. Well, early in my career, a big issue I've always had is getting fog light covers and vent holes and tight areas nice and glossy without running it. Trying to find a medium ground where the paint looks good, not too dry and not running, and making it all look even with the rest of the bumper. So today in this video, we're gonna focus on gun adjustments and different spraying techniques to get the rest of the bumper completely nice and smooth, just like the factory would. Now with sealer and base coat, you're really not gonna have that issue. So what I'm gonna do first is knock down a coat of white sealer, a coat of base coat, and we'll bring it back here and focus on the clear coat, on how to apply the clear coat and how to set up that paint gun. So let's get this thing all in color first. And the product we're using here is a sealer. A sealer is a primer that does not get sanded. It's a thinned out primer. You don't need to sand it. It goes on before your base coat and it covers up any of those plastic burn throughs or differences in the paint. Now for this bumper cover, it came in with lower bumper damage, but with years of chips, we had to go ahead and overhaul the whole entire bumper, sand it all down, re-primer it, and now we're using our sealer coat. Now you won't find that much of any paint defects happening between your sealer or your base coat. Really is when you get your clear coat spraying it, because it's much more runny and thinner. That's when you can run into your issues. But for sealer, you also want to make sure you get your sealer nice and smooth, because if your sealer is not smooth, then your base coat, it just won't be smooth. And what follows after base? Obviously your clear coat. Since our sealer was white, we were able to use only 2 coats of our Alpine White paint code 300 on this bumper cover. And once we got it all laid down, we're ready to start the clear coating process. So let's tune in and listen to what you need to do. And after 2 coats of base, you can see it's flashed off nicely, and it has a beautiful substrate that is now ready for the clear coat. Now, if you do have an option for a clear coat gun when doing something just like this, get a clear coat gun that is not going to be really aggressive, like a SATA RP. That might be a little bit too aggressive for a beginner. Something a little bit more modest with a softer fan and a lower pressure, maybe like the DV1 right here, the DV1 clear coat gun. It's a great option. I'll also list other great options in the description that you can use that will be good for something like this. Because if we put too much clear on right away, we're never going to be able to recover. We'll end up having to let it dry and then sand it back down, and we want to do this one time. So the main areas in which you'll get runs will be right in here and up in here. The areas where you really want it to get wet, right in here as well. Now the biggest factor that can help you right off the bat without even spraying is going to be your paint stand. If you don't have a paint stand that is able to move the bumper in different ways, it's going to be very difficult for you to spray the bumper and to get into all these contours. What I'll do is I'll link in the description a paint stand that will work for you. This is the 3M Innovative one, but it's really expensive. So I'm going to put in there the aftermarket one. I think it'll be a much better version, and it pretty much is the same thing. And when you have the paint stand, you can maneuver the bumper in different angles that you can get underneath and in between and everywhere. So they really do help. Now, if you are a first timer and you don't plan to really spray a bumper ever again, do your best. But this is for the guys that are in the business or wanting to take up a hobby in bodywork or painting. And we're ready for our first coat of clear coat. And what I recommend is spray it like it's not there. We don't want to go in between and try to get every single nook or cranny. We want the clear and the overspray to land within the areas here, so that when they land within these areas of the vent and the grill, it creates a sticky surface for the second coat. If we tried to gloss this out on the first coat, it's not going to work out. It's going to run, because right now the base coat is very, very smooth. But once the first coat of clear coat goes down, we'll allow that about 10 minutes to flash, and that will create like a sticky, tacky glue that we can really nail on our second coat. And well, our clear will stick much better and smoother in these areas. So the settings here are fan wide open first. We're going to talk about that in a moment, and fluid wide open, meaning that The fluid is at the max amount of fluid coming through the paint gun and the air cap atomizing it. So if we were to turn it in, one turn from here, that would be one turn in from wide open. Now, at this point, we're gonna run this around, I would say 18 to 21 PSI on the DB1 Clearcoat. This operates at a different pressure rate. A regular spray gun, you might wanna drop it down a little bit, but I would still have it at around 24 PSI in a regular spray gun, 25 around there. We're gonna spray the first side here, and then we'll move on to the rest of the bumper and talk about each portion as we go. So here we'll spray the bumper just like any other bumper. There we go, it's nice and shiny. Now we'll continue on this edge and then we'll break it into this section. Now down here, I'm not gonna go crazy. I just wanna get the clear on it because this is a lot of curves in area. So we just wanna maneuver our spray gun like this. We're not gonna change any pressure. So we'll get that top part now. And I always finish spraying and I stop over here. I'm not gonna stop paint right there because then we could get a buildup. And then this section right here, what I can do is I can turn sideways. You can also turn the cap if you want. You could do it like this if you want it. Okay? That would be just the same thing as doing it like this. Okay, sideways, it's up to you. Now that's gonna be the hardest area in there. And we're gonna focus on that more on the second coat. So right now I'm just gonna take my spray gun and flatten it out. And once again here, I'm gonna change my direction of my fluid tip and just kind of put it on just a little bit light. And now it's very hard to get to that edge, so I'll come around the backside and I'll use the backside to get to the edge. And that's it, leave it alone. Now while I'm here on the lower edge, I'll continue. And I can do it one or two ways, like this or sideways. I prefer sideways. We'll show you something different right here where I'm just going quick little spurts of Clearcoat. I always start spraying air here and then I lower it. So I never start on the panel. I'm gonna start spraying air here, Clearcoat here, and then come down. Watch. Perfect. Now I'll move my air cap once more, and I come around the back. That's done. This side, same thing. I'll go ahead and I can move my bumper stand up just a little bit to get a slightly better angle. Now I'm never really using full trigger, just lightly fanning it on. The top part, I'll use the bottom half of the fan to get the bottom half of the inside of the grill opening. There you go, so you're only using the bottom half of the fan. Then I'll carry that back up. And now I can just rock and roll. The top section is very easy. And now we'll hit this area up in real time. If we went that slow all the time and breaking it down and explaining it, then we would never have a smooth finish because our clear would start to dry before we start to lay down the next pass in a different area. So you gotta be quick with it. Now I'm going to show you a situation in extreme circumstances with very tight area that you need to get into that can be very dangerous, but I'm going to show you anyways just for technique purposes. Is you'll take your fan and you're going to wind that all the way in and then you're gonna wind it out just about a turn, okay? Now what that's gonna do is gonna cut down on the fan from very wide to very narrow. Okay, so that's still a little wide, but even more narrow. You can see it's narrow, then all the way to the right, completely narrow. What does that do to the air pressure? Well, it raises the air pressure way up. So if I were to spray it like this, I would have runs everywhere. So what you would need to do in that circumstance is, first, we're not gonna ever use that narrow of a pathway for a fan. Is we're gonna take it out here just a little bit. That's something you could use. Now we're gonna trim that air pressure down at least, let's see, at least 4 pounds back to where it was, because it will kick up. Because now we have the right amount of fluid going to the panel. If we had left it like that, what would happen is we would have way too much clear coat, and you'd have runs and puddles of clear everywhere, because it's completely over atomizing the clear coat. So what you would do in this situation is use it in these areas, and this is just for demonstration. This bumper doesn't need it as much, but you would take it in areas like this and you would shoot the clear in. If you couldn't get it all the way up into that corner, you would shoot the clear into that area, or even into here. This is a pretty good candidate actually for it. You could shoot the clear, and if it's coming out too dry, you would just take that fluid and open it up a little bit. And you gotta be careful with this, because when you open up your fluid, again, it's gonna change the fan. So you gotta juggle around with the settings just a little bit. And unfortunately, juggling around with the settings can get you a run, because you don't wanna have too much clear on the surface. Again, in that corner right here, you can use it to your advantage. So this is ready for its second coat. Let's go ahead and listen in on some more techniques that can help you for tight areas and, well, preventing runs. And getting back to the basics, and also not forgetting to give enough flash time for that first coat. I want you to give it at least 10 minutes. And what that's gonna do is really help that clear coat from the first coat really tack up. So now we can become a little bit more aggressive, not too aggressive, but a little bit more aggressive with our clear coat, because we know now it has something to stick to. It's gonna have something to grab it and pull it in, opposed to just sitting on the surface of the base coat on the first coat. So here what we're doing is we're utilizing our paint gun and the top or the bottom of the fan to get into certain areas of the grill opening. And once we get to our prime real estate where it's flat, we can go ahead and cruise. Then we'll go ahead into these smaller areas and use the bottom of our fan to hit certain areas of the opening of the grill. Now, what I did find actually using the paint gun with the dialed in fan, as I just mentioned, I used that a little bit to get into this cove. Now, the alternative is to spray it from the back of the bumper, so you can really do either one, but sometimes this technique does help to get into the way corner. Now you'll notice that whenever I'm doing some sort of area that's kind of hard to get into, I always position my gun at a 45. I never really hold it 100% perpendicular to the surface. I always have an angle, because what this does is it creates a softer fan pattern. As the fan and the spray pattern hit the surface, it doesn't hit the surface as aggressively, and well, that will also help prevent runs as well, because not only is it not getting full 100% clear coat, but you can also see what you're doing as the paint lays down, and then add a couple coats here and there if it needs it, or a couple more passes just to get it glossed out. So once again, I have that fan dialed in these fog light areas, and that really helps. Now, one mistake I don't want you to make is forget that the fan is dialed all the way in, and then when you're ready to go to these flat surfaces, start spraying. I'm telling you, it will happen. Sometimes you will forget that your fan is completely dialed in. It might not happen during the job, but let's say that you finish with this job and then you're ready to clear coat another job another day later. That will be a rude awakening once you find out that it's still dialed in. You'll have runs everywhere from that very precise fan pattern. As we can see, it's beautiful, completely glossed out in all of the vent covers and everywhere within the bumper cover itself. And just following these tips and tricks along in the video will not only help you out to spray bumper covers, but when it comes to spraying accessory pieces or mirrors or anything that has tough to reach areas, you need to know how to manipulate your gun. It also isn't a bad idea to pick up a minigun. A minigun's a little bit easier to get into smaller areas as well. Sometimes these big paint guns can have an issue getting into these smaller areas, but the tips and tricks you'll learn in this video should help you out to spray beautiful finishes as you're seeing right here on this beautiful BMW bumper. Well, those tips and tricks and my methods hopefully will help you when it comes to spraying a bumper cover or any area with very tight areas that the paint gun just really has trouble getting into. I know I struggled a lot with this, and I would love to know what you struggled with. Where do you get your clear coat runs? For me, it was always these bumper covers, and I think I got it down pat, but every once in a while, you know, I get a little runner that will surprise me. We're only human, and so are you guys, so no worries if you run into some mistakes. Well, from this point, we're gonna go ahead and get this thing all dried and get it back on the car and show you guys what it looks like. But in the meantime, guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint. I'll see you guys on the next episode.